3 or 5. I don't think she'll get another crack. How'd that go?
How you doing? 2 meetings in a row, Mr. Bird?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Classes is no longer going on? Or?
Well, I finished it. It was just a 1 semester class. So I'm out of it now. I'll be here for the rest of the year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. It is 5:45. We'll call the meeting to order. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the regular board meeting of February 12th. We'll start with roll call.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Mark Hillman. Angie Skillings. Carl Palmer.
Here.
Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart. Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Dale Dahlke.
Here.
Amber Kirsting.
Here. We have a quorum. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mission statement: the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Do we have any proposed revisions to the agenda order this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to our January highlight on youth. Right? Highlight on youth.
Yes, our commendation was not able to be here tonight, so we're going to push that to the next meeting. But we do have the February highlight on youth presentation. It's available in the public domain for anybody to see. It was another great month, and I'm not going to take too much away here from our student reps at the high school, but as you can see in the presentation, kids have been super involved with all sorts of different activities in the classroom, also the different extracurricular and athletic events. A couple things to highlight. First of all, the high school wrestling team, they just had their competition. 12 out of 14 wrestlers, I think I saw, moved on from the regionals into the sectionals. And then in just an absolute wonderful night, last Saturday night at the high school gym, the Menomonie girls basketball team had just a great game against Eau Claire Memorial. And Memorial's really good. They have a good team too. Well, our girls won. They clinched the Big Rivers Conference Championship. So congratulations to Coach Harmon and the girls, also the wrestlers, but also all the other kids that are involved. We had a professional development day this morning, and we had a number of our jazz band students come in early on their day off. There was no school for students today. They were there at 7:15 or so, getting ready, and the jazz band played for all of our staff members coming in for a day full of meetings. So just super proud of our kids, our staff, and everyone involved. Check out the report when you get time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And that brings us to our student representative communications.
Good evening, members of the school board. I am Max Boer. I'm the student body president, and this is Taya Johnson. She's the vice president. And we are thrilled to present an overview of the recent achievements and upcoming endeavors from the clubs, organizations, and teams at MHS.
Let's start with the HOSA regional competitions. We had numerous students showcase exceptional skills, with several qualifying for the state competition.
Moving on to DECA state qualifiers, we're proud to announce that 24 individuals are set to represent our school at the state competition at Lake Geneva, doubling the participation from previous years.
Our forensics team achieved first place in their third consecutive tournament. Our forensics team continues to excel with one final invitational tournament on the horizon.
Adeline Collingsworth will also be showcasing her talent at the upcoming FCCLA regional competition, competing in the Say Yes to FCS event at UW Stout on the 21st.
In addition, 14 FBLA members participated in the Region 1 competition, with the top 3 winners advancing to the state competition in Green Bay.
Our MHS Orchestra sent 9 students to the Dorian Orchestra Festival in Decorah, Iowa, where they got the opportunity to create music with students from orchestras all over the country.
And our National Ocean Science Bowl team secured 3rd place overall and dominated the problem-solving portion of the competition at UW-Milwaukee.
Moving on to sports, our wrestling team competed in the regional championships last Saturday, ending as the regional champions, and are preparing for team state coming up this Tuesday.
Our boys swim and dive team is also preparing to compete at the state level.
Our dance team achieved an impressive 6th place finish at the state competition held in lacrosse.
And let's not overlook Mary Burke's achievement of scoring 1,000 points in girls basketball, making it a historic milestone for our school. These accomplishments showcase the dedication, talent, and spirit of our student body. We are immensely proud of their achievements and look forward to their continued success in both academic and extracurricular activities.
Thank you for your attention and support.
Rachel, if I could, nice job. If I could just add, the hockey team, they have their tournament starting. They host on Thursday this week. I'm looking at Mr. Drake.
Next week. Or, no, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's this week now. Today is Monday. It's all blending together. It's every night. It's every single night there's something going on. The hockey team is going to be hosting the regionals at the Dunn County Ice Arena on Thursday. And then the girls basketball team will be hosting the regionals. I think they don't play until next week.
Friday.
A week from Friday. And then the wrestling, the sectional wrestling meet that Max talked about, we put in for it as a school district to host. So we're actually hosting the sectional wrestling meet tomorrow night at the high school. And I don't know anything about wrestling, but if you want to see some real strong guys that are really good at what they do, come watch the Menomonie Wrestlers tomorrow night.
Awesome, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Next up, we have community communications. We have 4 speakers tonight. First up is Ruth Renison.
You can go right next to the microphones.
This is Ruthie. My name is Ruthie. She's a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy until she grew a little older enough to tell everyone that she's actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. This is Ruthie's brother, Xavier. Xavier is a cisgender boy. That means when Xavier was born, everyone thought he was a boy, and as he grew older, it turned out everyone was right. He is a boy. Boy is Xavier's gender identity. There are so many ways, different ways to be a boy or a girl, too many to fit in a book, but not everyone feels like either a boy or a girl. Non-binary is a helpful word that can describe a kid who doesn't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. This is Ruthie's friend, Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought Alex was a girl, but Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. This is Alex's friend. JJ is neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, they never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Alex and JJ are both non-binary. Just like there are many different ways to be a boy or a girl, there are many different ways to be non-binary. Too many to fit in a book. Some kids don't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. They feel like neither. Some kids feel that their gender identity isn't always the same. It's often changing. And even with all of these possible ways to be, some kids don't feel any of the words they know fit them exactly right. There are a never-ending number of ways to be yourself in the world. Whether you feel like a boy or a girl, both or neither, or you describe yourself the other way, that is your gender identity. Your gender identity might match the people that you were when you were born. Or it might not. See, when you were born, you couldn't tell people who you were or how you felt. They looked at you and made a guess. Maybe they got it right, maybe they got it wrong. What a baby's body looks like when they're born can be a clue to what the baby's gender will be, but not always. When people guess wrong, it's okay to let them know. Ruthie was 5 and she told her parents, I know you think I'm a boy, but really I feel like a girl. Oops, Ruthie was a girl all along, all along. They just didn't know it at first. When people guess right, it's also okay to let them know. Xavier was 3 and a half when he told his family.
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes. My timer is too quiet. Thank you.
Can I get some of the title of that book was, please? She wants to know the
Can
title.
you just tell us the title of the book?
It feels good to be yourself. A book about gender identity.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Josie Tillman.
I'm Josie Tillman, and I'm from NAC. Dr. Zadowski and members of the board. Contentment is found in self-acceptance. On a small farm with a family of ducks. With 5 little ducklings. One duckling was confused. He thought he was a rooster. He was little ducky. Every morning he saw Rooster Riley with his beautiful red comb on his head sitting on top of the barn letting out a loud crow. Little Ducky thought if only he had a red comb, everyone would see that he was a rooster too. One day he found the farmer's red work glove and put it on his head. See, I'm a rooster, just like Rooster Riley. But the other barnyard animals just laughed at him. You're not a rooster, they said. That glove looks silly on your head. Little Ducky was sad. He was so sure he was a rooster. He always woke up early, just like a rooster. When he practiced how to crow, when he would let out a loud cock-a-doodle-doo, it sounded more like whack-a-doodle-doo. Rooster Riley just laughed. That isn't how roosters crow, he said to Little Ducky. You sound like a duck. One day, wise old Duck, who lived in the same farmyard, came over to Ducky and took him under her wing. Listen, Little Ducky, she said, don't pay any attention to those other animals. Let me help you understand who you are. Look at your feet. You have webbed feet. Your feet are not like a rooster's feet. Yes, but I don't feel like a duck. I feel like a rooster, replied Little Ducky. Remember, who you are isn't based on your feelings, explained Wise Duck. Feelings change. What doesn't change is the way you were made. Now look at your bill. You have a nice bill, not a beak like a rooster. That wonderful bill was made so you could catch insects. Does a rooster have a bill like that? No, said Little Ducky. The rooster pecks at seeds on the ground. That's how he was made. Ducks were made to do things that roosters cannot do. You can dive under the water and eat little fish. Ducks can't do that. Little Ducky looked at the other ducklings. He realized Wise Old Duck was right. You mean I was made just the way I am for a reason? Yes, no mistakes. Let's go swimming. But I'm afraid to swim. Just try it and pretty soon you'll feel more and more at home in the water. But what if I think I am still a rooster? Isn't it important to be who you think you are? No, our thoughts can often lead us astray. There's an old saying, Little Ducky said to himself, I was made to be a duck, not a rooster, a duck. He jumped in and said, look, I'm swimming. Rooster Riley strutted on over. Now that's something to crow about. Little Ducky suddenly felt a new confidence. So, this book is not in the Knapp library. That book that she read is. This book teaches truth. That book teaches lies. Thank you.
Our next speaker we have is Cecil Cooper.
Good evening, and thank you for your time and your attention. I have received my 2023 property tax bill showing that they increased. Naturally, I wanted to know where my tax dollars were going. As I looked at it, and I looked at all the different categories that you spoke of, the amount that it showed for the school district was a 15.3% increase from 2022 to 23. You're also requesting a referendum. to further increase the tax burden. When is enough enough? As a taxpayer, am I getting a quality education for our students for this money? I have used usnews.com, US News High School Ranking, as a resource. And I have looked at that for several years. Each year they rank all the high schools in the country. Here's Menomonie's high school report. Math proficiency for the 2023-2024 year. Math proficiency, 40%. Reading proficiency, 50%. Science, 40%. With a graduation rate of 90%. As I said, this report card is very similar to previous years. This report card begs a most serious question. With 90% graduation rate and proficiency rate of only 40% in math and science, and 50% in reading, does that mean 50% of the students are not proficient in math and science, but have a diploma? And is this a quality education? I think not. And before you argue that more money is needed to get better results, I will point out that charter and private schools consistently achieve better academic results with less money for their students, including low income and disadvantaged students. It is time for the district to review its priorities. Will you choose a quality education for our students? Or will it be more fluff, such as a new bathroom facility at the sports field? Or the currently popular education programs such as DEI, CRT, or SEL? Our children deserve better than fluff. It is their future at stake. A secondary source that I looked at is also Wisconsin K-12 Trends by the MacGyver Institute that support the findings of US News. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker tonight is Mike Cooper.
Good evening. Mike Cooper, Menomonie, Wisconsin. There are so many different topics that a concerned parent or taxpayer could bring before the board that it is actually difficult to choose. This is because it seems the district, like the United States, has lost its way. Parents and taxpayers question, are our students being taught the 3 R's in school or merely inculcated with progressive ideologies? I brought up concerns for the last 3 years, yet not once has the board member or administrator ever called me to discuss my concerns. So how can I have any confidence in this district? How can anyone have confidence in the education of our students? Standardized test scores, as my wife just showed students with lower proficiency scores, but we have a robust transgender policy and books and libraries that I would bet many of you would not want to read to your children. Your position as an elected official is to impose between an illegal or illegal organization and the students, parents, and taxpayers of the district. This is the principle of the lesser magistrate, which I introduced to you last year. If you think your job is to basically rubber stamp all the edicts that come from the progressive infested Department of Education or the DPI or teachers union, then why are you here? Do what is best for the students. Look to Spring Valley School District. They interposed and eliminated much of the SEL and DEI programming. Children need a firm foundation to build their lives on. You tell them to trust the science, but then they should ignore the science. How does that work? How can you teach that X chromosomes is a girl, XY is a boy in the biology class, but then boys can choose to be girls and girls can choose to be boys? What kind of foundation is that? We all need an answer to that and other questions. Until those answers come, there is no way I can vote to give you $300 more a year, not with a clear conscience. Thank you.
I can make one comment. I don't think we have your phone number, Mr. Cooper.
It's on there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's always been there.
All right, well, I'm happy to follow up and discuss things privately, but our phone numbers are always in the district website if you'd like to reach out to us individually.
Rachel, just one more comment. Cecil, I was just pulling up the property tax info, and I'm not gonna read your info publicly here, even though it is available publicly on the website. I do think it's important that people take a look at their assessed value changes from year to year. That can have a big impact on what the actual taxes are, and I recognize that. But in terms of the school tax rate, it definitely has gone down.
You're still getting more dollars from me as a taxpayer from 2000 to 2023, correct?
It depends on what happens with your valuation. Yes.
Well, my evaluation went up, so more taxes are assessed, which means your portion that you're getting from me as a taxpayer increases as well, correct?
Individual taxpayers have different tax bills, yes, based on their valuation.
So if it increases for a taxpayer, then a larger percentage of that, more dollars are going to the school district because there is an increase.
A larger total amount, but not a larger percentage, because the rate is the same.
Yeah, we can talk offline about it too, but it's important to know that there's more than, when you look at the school mill rate, it's decreased.
All right, next on the agenda, we have revenue and expenditure reports for the month ended January 2024.
Okay, we'll take a look at the revenue report first, if you'd like to open that up. And for the month of January, you have noted we received the third special education aid payment. We've also received our first property tax levy payment, transportation aid, grant payments, and also local revenues and donations. The timing of those receipts compared to the timing of when these reports are put together, they don't always coincide, so there is a discrepancy there. But for our general operation Fund 10, the total received in is, through January, is $4,009,420.55. And that's our general fund. In our Fund 21 gift donation fund, we've received it in $481,230.57. And then for special education, our Fund 27, year-to-date through the end of January, we've received in $317,343.59. Moving on to the next report would be the expenditures by function. And again, that's year-to-date through the month of January. For our general Fund 10, our percent spent is at 36.21 compared to 38.56% compared to the same time last year. In Fund 27, we were at 42.68 compared to 42.36. And then food service, we're at 40.44% compared to 42.49%. So looking at the different funds, it is down slightly compared to last year, but again, you have to take into account the timing of bills and also the timing of purchases, which vary from year to year. And then...
Are you having a board doc problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody is? Okay, we'll see how, sorry, it looks like board docs just went down, but, okay.
I had trouble earlier, so
We'll see how we do.
still having issues.
I have my tabs open, but we'll see how far we can get. Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
I think so.
I'll review the last report then.
Okay.
And that's the expenses by object for all funds combined. So far this year through the end of January, we're at 35.64% compared to 38.50% last year at the same time. The year prior, we were at 38.72%. So again, nothing out of the ordinary for the month of January, just a variance in timing of purchases, timing of paying bills. Any
Jen-
questions?
Jenny's grabbing some paper copies of the agenda. If anybody wants one, we should have plenty. Yeah, I think something happened to the board docs server.
We can't find your site.
It's not our network, it's off-site for sure.
They tend to do their updates on.
Great idea.
I don't understand.
Well, our next agenda item is the monthly employment report. Thank you. We don't have to approve this, so I guess this is fine. Okay. Does anyone who was able to open the monthly employment report have questions about it? I actually noticed one just this afternoon, and I apologize for not getting this in earlier, but it looks like there is an individual who was resigned and then hired in January. Is that, what's going on there?
Yes. Sorry. There were some like family things, personal things that caused that resignation and then rehire, and so it's kind of on hold at this point.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Anybody else have questions about the employment report? Would it make sense to go to discussion item while we're waiting for people to get back into board docs? All right, I guess we could do the consent agenda. Okay. Next up, we have the consent agenda. And I entertain a motion, I guess, to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
Second.
All right, motion by Carl, second by Abe, and the consent agenda includes the minutes from our regular board meeting of January 8th, minutes of the special meeting January 22nd, financial reports for January 2024, and donations exceeding $1,000.
And board member, is it coming back now? And you've all had the information since Thursday, so it's not like you haven't seen it before. But we do have paper copies if there are any questions. But typically the consent agenda doesn't have many.
Maybe in the context of the previous discussion, I noticed when I was looking through earlier today that in the revenue report, there's, roughly, I think there's about $9,000-ish of revenue in. And the expenses were, something like $3 million-ish for January. Like, how does that sort of discrepancy interact with the fund balance that we keep talking about?
At certain times of year, there is low points in revenue. That usually comes in November and December, because in January we start receiving in property tax payments. So if a district does not have adequate fund balance, the low points of the year, you could run into needing to borrow for cash flow purposes. And that is exactly that scenario.
And on that, what times of year do those revenue sources tend to come in? So January through February, you have income, local property taxes coming in. At some point, you have state revenues coming in.
Right. We have state revenues. State aid comes in September, and then there's a lag, a lower revenue. We get another payment in December, and then so on. Then in the spring, so the state scatters their state aid payments out over the course of the year, and so then, like I say, at times there are lower points than on others. Once we receive the property taxes in January, that's typically enough to carry a district or our district through the summer months. So really October, November, December is the lowest points.
So when we talk about the fund balance, and since it's relevant to these monthly government reports, and we say a number for what it is or has been or what it's reached, kind of when do you take that benchmark? Because obviously it's going up and down month by month.
Well, when we do our cash flow analysis, we take a look at the whole 12 months, the whole year, and then we map it out and estimate what we think our revenue sources will be and our expense sources will be, and try to determine when we might have our lowest points and whether or not we need to short-term borrow or get a line of credit to cover us during those. So we really look at the full 12 months as a estimate.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just to follow up, so this is my 10th year. My first year, the board, we spent a lot of time talking about kind of a financial vision for Menomonie, because we were at that point. We were establishing lines of credit. We were, on the verge of short-term borrowing. And that was the first thing in that financial vision, was to establish enough fund balance to avoid that, because it's just throwing money away with the interest cost. The next step then was to look at some of the unfunded liabilities, which that got taken care of. And then the capital improvement planning was kind of step 3. So we've accomplished all those things, but yeah, with what we're facing, those things will be degraded quickly without additional revenue.
Thanks for that background, yeah. Any additional questions on or comments on the consent agenda this evening? Right. Should we do a voice vote on the consent agenda? Okay.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Abe Smith,
Yes.
Rachel Henderson,
Yes.
Dale Galkey,
Yes.
Amber Kirsting.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. There is no personnel consent agenda, or there are no items on the personnel consent agenda this evening, so we'll skip over that and move on to discussion items. So our first discussion agenda item tonight is the review of the 2024-2025 MHS course recommendations.
So board members, you've all received our timeline. We gave it to you as a reminder last meeting. It was initially presented late in the fall. And so this is just kind of the next step. All high school kids registered for classes for next year. And then Mr. Drake, along with his team, and Mr. Seguin have been going through those requests. And Brian will go ahead and share the results as we start to plan more for the 2024-2025 school year.
All right, so like Joe said, this is kind of the next step in that process. And every year we will have students that sign up for a wide range of courses. And from time to time, and each year, we typically will have a handful of courses that enrollments at the high school level won't reach the threshold of 15 that automatically makes them eligible to run. And then when you take a look at the enrollments within the department, and when Mr. Drake and the high school administration sits down meeting the teams, there will be some recommended courses that departments and high school administration will ask and will meet and discuss and ultimately make some recommendations to run with enrollments of less than 15 students in it. They're still in the registration process, so it is possible, and in some cases quite likely, that some of these courses between now and the next meeting will have additional students that get enrolled in them that will move them up above 15. So ultimately the board won't have to vote on whether or not they run or not, because if they cross that threshold, they come off of this list, and they'll just be run. But in many cases, this may be a capstone course, the last course that a student will take prior to exiting and graduating from high school. Maybe one of those capstone courses that also runs as a dual enrollment option, where students receive both high school and post-secondary credit, in the case with a few of them. And once we start getting close to 15, it's more cost-effective to run the course than to have the student take it through an early college credit now or start college now program, that type of way. And in some cases, it may just simply be, it would be good practice for the students to be able to take this class, and we have room within staffing to allow that. So this year, we only have 5 departments that are making some recommendations to run courses at less than 15. There's a total of 7 courses that you see in the information that was presented. So at this point in time, these are the courses that high school administration is recommending, and I'm in support of running these courses and monitoring those enrollments over the next couple of weeks. But ultimately, they will come back to you in 2 weeks for your approval. So at this point, I can answer any questions. Mr. Drake is also here as well, should there be questions.
Board members, one thing I want to point, excuse me, I was a little loud. One thing I want to point out is one of the courses on this list is French 4. And as you know, Mrs. Iden has submitted her request to retire at the end of the school year. She is the French teacher. And I do think, Brian and I have already been talking, and Mr. Drake and Brian and I are meeting tomorrow. And not that we're going to have a meeting tomorrow and decide what to recommend, but we are really investigating the feasibility of continuing to offer 2 language options for our students. We have a lot of students that sign up for Spanish, not so many for French, and especially the way the trends are moving in public school districts, more and more districts are looking at more of a singular foreign language with additional opportunities through different virtual education programs. We also want to be careful, however, knowing that some students might be in their 3rd or 4th year next year going in, to this French series of courses. So we're going to talk more about it tomorrow, but like I mentioned, French 4 is one of the classes. We want to make sure we have a good solution for kids, but I also think as it comes to staffing planning for next year, which the board will begin to see that in the coming meetings, I think that's something the board's going to have an in-depth discussion about. But any other questions on the recommendations from Brian tonight?
Would I assume concert chorus as known participants in the current choir, subtracting seniors who graduate, not knowing how many will audition and come in?
Yep,
Yeah.
and that's exactly it. So it is likely when auditions happen later this spring, but just with the timing of registration, they're not there yet.
And account for 25% growth.
Are there any courses not on this list, not on this list of recommendations that did have, say, roughly 10 or so people register, or is this what you got?
So the short answer is there are some courses that would be in that 8 to 10 range that aren't on this list, but with high school administration having conversation within the departments, within the current FTE allocations that they have, Mr. Drake and the team at the high school does a really nice job of sharing this information and getting feedback from the departments on which courses ultimately should run. In some cases, they'll make a determination that when you take a look at the number of seniors that are currently enrolled in a course or juniors, and a junior level course is a builder to another course, they will make some recommendations so that to try and keep enrollment stable in those departments as well. Thanks.
I thought it was a nice diversity of programs that we're approving here. My question is, so if the French teacher retires and we approve the French 4, how do you hire?
And that's why this is just for discussion tonight. Like Brian said, there's going to be changes before the next board meeting when we have the firm recommendations. This is really more informational tonight. That's a discussion we're having tomorrow and further to see what kind of solutions are available. I know that's not a firm answer, but that's what I can give you tonight. But, and I feel bad that everything's kind of going back to the referendum, but it is a big deal. And I think that's sometimes a misconception people in the community have, that, schools are, providing all sorts of classes that are, underutilized, but there's a lot of weeding out that happens. I mean, there's a lot of courses that are offered that aren't even on this list because, the student enrollment just wasn't sufficient. And like Brian said, we do the best we can to try to alternate years and such. If there's low enrollment one year and most of the kids are juniors, well, maybe we could wait a year and then they could take it as seniors along with kids who might be juniors or sophomores. And we've also changed some of the prerequisites for courses to make sure we're maximizing opportunities for kids. There are some courses in a sequence where it just does not make sense for a freshman or a sophomore to take a certain course. But in a lot of the courses, Mr. Drake and department heads have done a great job really analyzing those courses, and there have been changes over the years to try to maximize the use of our staffing. So I think they run a really tight ship, and they've done a really good job at that. And I think we're going to offer a very full program next year, and it's just a matter of a couple of these, outliers that trying to determine which ones are the greatest value for the staffing that's available. It also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to lay off a teacher one period. I mean, if we want to, have teachers leave, that's about the quickest way to do it, is offer them a 7/8 contract or something. So in some cases, there might be a particular department or curricular area where we may be able to be a little more flexible with offering a smaller section. It also doesn't make sense to try to go find a 0.3 FTE teacher. So as much as we might like to offer one additional class of, just pick any department, science, well, it might be nice to offer one more science class. Well, your choices are put people on overload, and sometimes we've done that, or try to find a 1/8 position. Well, good luck finding a full-time chemistry teacher, much less a 1/8 chemistry teacher.
Any other questions or discussion regarding the course recommendations? So this will come back to us in a couple of weeks for approval, and some of these might not be on here anymore for various reasons. Next up, we have discussion of policy 343.1, class size in combined and split grades.
Rachel, if I could introduce this a little bit, if that's all right? So first of all, board members, with board docs acting up, I emailed you just a few minutes ago the class size report. And class size, so you could check your email since that doesn't go through the board doc software. If you want to pull up that report, or you can get it through board docs if it's working. What I can tell you is that class size changes in the school district almost on a daily basis. And that makes it very difficult to be efficient, although I think we've done a really good job with that. With that being said, there are some times when we have classes that are larger than what we would prefer, and there's also sometimes classes that are smaller than what we would prefer. But this policy is very important for providing direction to the administrative team as we plan our staffing for the following year. It's also important to note that this policy was last revised in 2014. February of 2014, I started about, 5 months after that. So it's time to review this. There's been a lot of changes to education in the last 10 years. There's been a lot of changes to academic support in the last 10 years, but there's also been a lot of changes to the needs of kids in the last 10 years. And I think you all understand that clearly. The current policy calls for guidelines. They're not strict enrollment caps, but the guidelines for kindergarten through second grade are to have class sizes from 15 to 24 students. From 25 to 30 students, there should be consideration for adding support in the classroom. And then at 31 plus students, it would be the consideration of additional sections. Third through fifth grade is 18 to 24, 25 to 30 again, and 31 plus again. So the difference there is some smaller classes are allowed from time to time when we look at kindergarten, first and second grade. And we've done the best we can to try to stay within those guidelines, but like I said, it doesn't always happen, especially on a given particular day when families may move in or move out of the school district. A lot of times we see seasonal movements based on job opportunities and such. But I guess what we're looking at here is, this year was a good example. We have a couple situations where at the elementary level we have some awfully large classes. And you can see that in the report that I shared with you. I'm just waiting for it to pop up now for me. This is being slow. Here we go. Oak Lawn Elementary, for instance, in first grade, on this report, it's 3 sections, 26, 26, and 27. That's a lot of first graders to have in a classroom. And it's within our policy, but I also know that it's been very difficult on our teachers, especially when you look at the needs of the kids. When we project that forward to next year, and there's other grade levels that have similar pinch points like that, we've had some, Oaklawn's another example, at the kindergarten level. Well, we had 49 kindergartners, which is low, so we cut that 3 sections into 2. Well, that has a class of 25 and 24. Again, that's a lot of kindergartners in a classroom. So we are absolutely going to do the best we can to function under whatever guidelines the board puts forth to us. But I think it's important that before we get to our staffing plan for next year, that we have the discussion about this policy and does it need to be modified at all. From what I've seen, I think the 31 plus is high. I think dropping that down a bit, it would make sense. I also recognize the financial situation, facing us, and we also don't want to have a situation where our guidelines are, promoting too many small classes either. Any thoughts or any questions that the board members might have?
I guess I have a general question, Joe. When we're looking at class sizes, I'm hoping that we're going to make decisions on evidence about learning and from that profession, which is not my profession. So is the biggest driver with class sizes about supervision and keeping kids to task, or is it the actual education being provided to that kid? So if you have too big of a class, when we add help, is it a para to help the room stay focused, or is it another teacher part-times to help with certain educational needs, and does that change with age?
Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. So if I miss some of it, make sure you keep me accountable on it. First of all, let's talk about additional support, because the policy does call for additional support at certain levels. And I would say 10 years ago, additional support may have meant adding a paraeducator into each classroom or something like that. I would say 10 years ago, we probably could find 3 paraeducators or 2, not at a moment's notice, but relatively quickly. And as you know, we've had paraeducator positions this school year that have either not been filled or continued to cycle with different people. So the paraeducator support is definitely more spotty than it ever was. But on a positive piece is that the intervention program that we have, we did not have that 10 years ago. So there definitely is more academic support, especially in the areas of math and reading. To get to the original comment and question you had though, Carl, especially when we're talking about our youngest learners, but I would say all the way up, from what I've seen on research, class size does not have a large impact on overall student achievement. If we're simply looking at test scores, John Hattie's research on effect size would suggest that class size does not have a tremendous impact on that. However, when you look at supervision, and you know how much attention our district has had over relationships and personalized learning for kids, that is a huge factor when we talk about class size. The other thing to consider now that we didn't have to consider as much 10 years ago is the ability to recruit and retain staff. 10 years ago, if you had a kindergarten or second grade or elementary teaching vacancy, you may have gotten triple-digit applications. Maybe not that many 10 years ago, but close. I know 15 years ago you definitely would have. Now, that's not the case. It's a free agent market, and if Menomonie has class sizes in the upper 20s, we are going to have a very difficult time recruiting and retaining teachers. So I think that has to be factored in as well. Did I get all your questions?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm curious if you elaborate a little bit on the, additional help and what it means. And there's a difficulty of hiring both teachers and paraeducators. There's also, like I said, the interventionists who, in some cases maybe migrate room to room, in some cases maybe bring students out. There's also, paraeducators focusing on students with IEPs or special education needs. who also, although they're not in the in the classroom as a classroom operator, they are serving students who would otherwise be another source of attention to the teacher. So I'm kind of curious how you see as the workday flows. Like, what does it mean nowadays to say, wherever you put the number, like additional help? Does that literally mean hiring a parent to go in the classroom at a full-time basis, or are you mentioning some other, relationships?
No, I would say that if we can find paraeducators, the priority is to service IEPs. Those are mandated services, and those have to come first. Maybe Sam wants to talk just a little bit about how we've tried to provide additional support at Oak Lawn, since they are in that guideline area where consideration for adding additional support is suggested.
So we, at the beginning of the year, we looked for a regular ed para, so someone who is not specifically working with our special ed students, but in the classroom to help support on a day-to-day basis. And so we were able to find someone who was able to transition from their educational support specialist position into a para position. And then we kind of backfilled and hired that for the rest of the year. So that's one of the ways that we were able to do that with providing additional support in those kindergarten classrooms.
So one para for two classrooms.
Yeah, exactly. One para for two classrooms. And she splits her time between the two based on where those needs are. We've also, I think, extensively helped to support with some behavioral pieces, and our behavioral interventionist has also been in those classrooms and trying to kind of help direct some of the instruction and management within the classroom.
I know Mrs. Joe, the principal at Oak Lawn, for that particular situation, also provided relief through a substitute educator, for instance, to help those teachers have time to prepare for parent-teacher conferences, because that's a lot. When you talk about that many kids for one teacher, they needed time, so I think they might have each had a half a day or something, which I'm happy that support is provided for our teachers, but I do not like our professional educators taking a day not being in front of their kids. So that's problematic. But it was a creative solution, and I think it was appropriate. And then one other thing I want to talk about that isn't necessarily listed in this policy, but it's been a long-standing practice in Menomonie well before my time here, is that when we have looked at River Heights Elementary, we have looked at River Heights through a little bit different lens. And we all know that when we look at the demographics of our schools, River Heights Elementary definitely is our school with the highest number of students that are considered by the state to be economically disadvantaged. So that's also been considered when looking at Section 8. In other words, there is more responsibility for those teachers and more needs for the students. So if we have had situations where we were going to reduce a section, River Heights would not be the first choice for reducing sections. But I will say that has evened out a little bit across the different schools.
I have one more follow-up question for Sam. So in the situation you have one para working between two classrooms, or maybe I know this is a question maybe for our principal more. Throughout the day, the energy level of the students, the things they need help with, if there's, say, a project right after lunch or right after recess, the para probably is needed in that room, but how much does that then impact the scheduling of the day if this person has to move back and forth? And, does it actually start impacting the way the teacher arranges their classroom in terms of when they do activities, how they operate the flow of the classroom?
I would say yes, that I would guess that it's probably fluctuating from week to week, prioritizing academics, but then also figuring out where those areas of most need are.
In looking at the policy, I would suggest, and I'm not making a firm recommendation again, I will as we move forward, but in this initial discussion, I would suggest that the board look at that 25 to 30 number and look at that 31 plus number and consider the idea of potentially moving that down a little bit. I I don't think having 30 kindergarten through second grade students in a classroom is very feasible. I think at least dropping it down, 28, 27. We've had experience of 27 and it's been very, very challenging. But I definitely think dropping that below 30 makes a lot of sense.
The way the policy is written, with the range for consideration for adding support in the classroom of being 25 to 30, do you take that as a hard and fast, like you won't send a parent if there's less than 25? Or is that, how is that currently handled right now?
We do not have, we've hardly hired academic paras, especially because we have the advanced intervention programming. So no, I would say that the paras are more about IEP needs.
Do you find when there's sufficient paras to address IEP needs, that the classroom management of a larger size class is more manageable for those teachers, or not necessarily?
I do think, and the principals could speak up too, I do think having an extra adult in the room, whether the adult is serving a particular student with a disability or whether they are serving some other need, is helpful. But I will say that if a disability is such that there is a paraeducator in the classroom, that disability is significant enough where that para is going to be extremely busy, and their extra support as an adult in the room would be more of crisis management.
I really agree with what you said about attracting and retaining staff with decreasing those numbers. I think that's about combined and split grades also. And when I read the policy, I didn't see any mention of split grades. I realize we don't have any split grades, but should we revise that policy to address that issue, or?
Yeah, that's something we could look at closer. We have had some creative scheduling in the past at River Heights with some personalized learning sections. I don't know if Brian would have anything to add on that. Also, when we start looking at some of the numbers at the rural elementary schools, I think, especially if we're looking at like some of the specialized elective offerings, I think that's something that could come into play there. Brian, is there anything you want to add?
I would just add that, historically, when we've taken a look at overall class sizes, whether they were individual grade level specific or combined and split grades, we've utilized these numbers as thresholds on there. So if you had a combination of kindergarten and first grade students together, which is what we were doing at River Heights for a few years, we took a look at the total combined number of students and how many classroom teachers were going to be assigned, and we utilized these numbers as guidelines for that purpose as well.
So to that point, some of these numbers are quite high, some of them are quite low. And you mentioned earlier, a longer term question about boundaries between zones, the different elementary schools. I'm curious how much of the high class size issue could be addressed by advertising and encouraging families to consider doing internal transfer to a different school. I mean, if someone's to use my own family as an example, my daughter goes to River Heights, but her bus actually goes to Downsville before it goes to River Heights. So it's, we're on the edge.
Perhaps your family wasn't one of them that was contacted, but I can tell you that our principals have done quite a bit of that in the last couple of years in trying to balance class sizes. Typically, we don't see a lot of volunteer movement, which is one of the reasons why I think we do need to look at that attendance boundary between Downsville and especially Oaklawn. But to your point, Dave, yeah, I think there's more we can do, and I think that's a tool that, as we look at these attendance area exceptions and such that our elementary principals will be reviewing here between now and the end of the school year, that is a tool that we can consider.
And I imagine one of the hang-ups for that sort of internal transfer is the transportation question. Right? So that might be the hang up for a lot of families, of just how do they get their kids to school every day.
And then the daycare issue as well.
If a family is interested in an in-district transfer, knowing that we're contracting our transportation, is there anything the admin does to help parents figure out transportation?
Generally, if it's a family requesting a move, the understanding is that it's the family's responsibility. But with that being said, yes, there is a lot of discussion and support that happens from the school district, primarily the elementary building principals and the bus company, talking about options and available transportation solutions.
And then I actually was wondering, are the current enrollment maps on the website somewhere?
Yes. Yeah. I was just looking at it the other day, actually.
You can, we'll figure that out at some point. Maybe if someone finds it, they could just email it to everybody else.
So under district information, student enrollment information would be the tab. And then within student enrollment information, there's a tab for school boundary information. And there's an interactive map.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask too, if there's a point where, a threshold where we consider adding additional support for middle and high school students if the classroom size gets big? Because I know it's a little bit easier to imagine students of that age sitting in a larger classroom, but the burden of the additional hours for grading and giving meaningful feedback and there's, more papers and the hours that takes outside of the classroom are quite a bit different for 18 students as compared to 30 students in a section. And if you happen to have a few different sections throughout the day that are really on that high end, is there a point that we've considered, even if it's not in the classroom support, something else creative to help with those additional hours of work?
Yeah, the policy does not call for additional support at the middle and high school level. It's either, run it or not. But I will say that both Mr. Betcher and Mr. Drake are here. I know that there's been a lot of work in the past to try to support teachers and kids. I know at the high school level, they run certain sections, especially sections that may have a number of students with disabilities, where a special education teacher or para also is in that class, and sometimes almost like in a team teaching atmosphere. So even though it's not called for, some of that is dictated by IEP mandates, but also through best practice with our special education department. I also know that in some areas, like English, for instance, some of our English language arts classes has a lot of writing, which is very labor intensive in terms of giving the feedback, reviewing and assessing that work. And I know that that's been a consideration when looking at the staffing and course selections for the English department, for instance. We also have other thresholds, like the science department, for instance. There's only so many lab stations available, and that can be a limiting factor. Also in the tech ed department. So I guess there are some of those things built in, but in terms of adding additional paras and stuff, no, we don't look at that. Mr. Betcher, Mr. Drake, or Mr. Seidman, is there anything to add that I missed?
Oh, no.
Pretty well covered it?
Yeah.
All right.
Any additional thoughts, questions, concerns about about the policy? I guess do you anticipate the admin team bringing forward some suggested policy changes, or we go to the board?
I guess what I'd like to hear tonight is, do you want to direct us to review this policy? We are planning on looking at it tomorrow as a team. But I guess I don't need a yes or a no in terms of do you support it, but is this something that you want us to review and potentially recommend some changes, or where we're at right now is kind of where we want to stay.
I think something I heard particularly from the QIC discussions last week was that there is interest among the teachers of looking at this and trying to make it up to more the way a modern classroom operates.
I'd be in favor of you bringing forth a recommendation of improvement. I would be in support of that.
I would also be in support of that. I really like the idea of moving that number down, especially for the fourth grades.
Anybody else have any comments?
Me too, although I would also like to see what that would do to the budget. It would be nice to have the dollar amount associated with that particularly.
And then one other thing I would like to do, and if we are going to bring forward recommended changes, I do think it makes sense, like we typically do, to take a look at what other schools are doing, other schools similar to us. And no matter what, I recommend that we keep this more as a guideline policy because of the mobility that we are seeing and the budget needs that we're facing. I do think there has to be flexibility, but to have a general consensus, I think will be helpful to give us direction in developing next year's plans.
I should have asked this earlier. Do you have an estimate of students coming into the new housing developments, even a rough, guess, ballpark?
Not really. I was talking about that during the referendum presentation a little bit, and the developer over in Hudson gave them a number of, I think it was 0.75 kids per unit, and we have not seen, I talked to Eric Atkinson a little bit, the city administrator, we have not seen any kind of factoring like that. So no, we really don't know at this
just
point.
Given the marketing pitch and the location of those, I'm guessing it's going to be pretty attractive to families, younger families especially. So, but who knows, right?
I would just add, if you're preparing stuff and not go to the ends of the earth, but any current evidence about the impact of class size, especially since COVID. I was doing a quick look, and certainly they looked at getting at that learning loss piece. Is it better to have tutoring, smaller class? There's some work being done, and if someone on the team knows where that information is, I would find it helpful, but again, I don't want to put a huge amount of work on this.
No, that's what we do.
I'd also be interested to know, and maybe this is further down the road, but what is the what's the impact on next year's staffing plan with or without a change here, right? If the policy stays as is versus if we change those numbers, do we know the specifics of how that would impact the staffing plan?
Yeah, I would say that we would have had, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at our current class sizes and thinking back to all the discussions and trying to predict how many more families would come in, it's very difficult, especially at River Heights. The enrollment, and Stacy was there for years, the enrollment that we expect, or the enrollment that's registered, I should say, in the summer, is often greatly different from what we actually see after the first week of September. But in looking at the class sizes right now that we have, and thinking back to those discussions, I would have made the same exact decisions under our current policy that we did. I wish that one section, or that one grade level at Oaklawn was just a little bit smaller, but I still think it was the right decision. I would say that, one, for sure, potentially 2 additional teachers is what I think would have been, would have made operations much better this year.
Thanks. There's nothing else on this discussion item. We'll move on to the summer school programming update.
Stacy, if you want to come sit by Leah, and I should have invited you up earlier. Stacy Lee is here, and she is the principal at Downsville Elementary School. She also is our summer school coordinator. As a school counselor at River Heights, Mrs. Lee has been involved with summer school for many, many years in the school district, and she did a great job taking over as coordinator, and she's done a really good job planning. So I know that she prepared just kind of an overview document for the board to look at But Stacy, is there anything particular you want to point out to the board?
Just the change in how it's structured. The days are the same, but we split it up into 3 different sessions. We're hoping that they'll enroll in a lot of variety of courses. I think it's a positive change. Just some of the things that I've seen come from that, we had our PD day today, met with a lot of teachers showing a lot of interest in teaching summer school this year. Last time I wrote this, it was 60 responses, now we're up to like 75. So pretty excited about that. Met with the high school today, they're all covered for remedial and online classes, so they're stepping up to the plate and everything's just kind of in full swing for summer school right now. I know a lot of you probably are thinking, why are we thinking of this, but our summer school is very vast. It's a great thing for our community, and it takes a lot of work, but it's worth it for how much we provide for our youth during the summer and families.
So for looking at this summer, like Stacy mentioned, looking at 3 sessions, June 17th to the 20th and the 24th to the 27th would be session 1, July 8th to the 11th, and then July 15th to the 18th, session 2, July 22nd to the 25th, and then July 29th to August 1st, session 3. AIM Art Camp would be in August 5th through 9th. And then we also have Friday field trips scheduled throughout the month of June. And then we would continue with the Jumpstart Days like we had this year, August 28th through 30th. Stacy, could you just maybe, just for a minute, talk about how this is different from last summer?
Sure. We had 2 sessions, each were at 3 weeks. So there were 2 3-week sessions. This time we're only doing 2 and 2.
So still 6 weeks, but instead of 2 sessions, 3 weeks each, 3 sessions, 2 weeks each.
That 4th of July week, just, we had to be creative with the schedule and just kind of switched up this year.
Does it seem like teachers are more excited to get on board with the shorter sessions, or not necessarily?
It's hard to say. I mean, they all have their opinions, but they're being creative in how they're splitting it up. So some of them say, I'll teach session 1 and 3, and I'll have a big break in the middle, or, I'm working it out with another teacher. So they're being creative with what they're coming at me with, and it's just going to be kind of an organization thing, which I kind of like to do. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's kind of like a puzzle of what everybody wants to do and fit in, but we're trying to make it work for them as well.
And that is one of the biggest challenges, and I know people love our summer school program, but it is challenging. And the teachers, they really, give it for the whole school year, and then to ask them to come back and teach more in the summer. And I know Sam in the HR department, we instituted, 3 or 4 years ago, a bonus structure so that, trying to encourage people to teach more than 1 session, and we're going to continue to do that again this year, which we think that is very helpful. But it still is a challenge to get enough staffing to offer everything that everyone wants.
I'm glad to hear you had good feedback from the staff about signing up to do summer school courses, because especially with the change of the timeline for the sessions, it means there's going to be some curriculum restructuring as well, right? I mean, people have to perhaps figure out, things that were a 3-week art course or something, or is now going to be figuring out how to do this in 2 weeks and have a result that the students are happy with at the end.
Yeah, I think a lot of our teachers were kind of getting stuck a little bit, and so they're happy to condense what they really like and what kids really like and add something new in. So they're refreshing what our descriptions are and coming up with different things. So I feel like it's been a positive thing to go 2, 2, and 2. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. River Heights remedial will still be, they enroll for the entire thing. So the rigor of academics and things will be supported there. It won't be such a changeover. But for our fun kind of activities and things like that, I think it's a good opportunity for kids to try things maybe that they wouldn't if it was a 3-week session, like they're not sure about, instead of, 8 days.
Yeah, for enrichment, I think this is going to be a real nice change.
Yeah.
Are you, as you're seeing people's ideas come in, do you anticipate any major changes to the offerings, or does it seem like it's going to
Down below, the Exploring Hmong Language and Culture, was a really interesting one. And then a lot of STEM activities are coming in, I feel like.
I know some people who will sign up for Legos.
Yeah, Lego in there, but the teacher that's doing it, Mr. Moss, is also bringing in science and like, it's not just, yeah, it's neat what they're coming with. So, yeah, a lot of the new courses, I think our teachers are looking for remedial pay. They are, so it's being creative with some of that science and writing and implementing that into enrichment as well. So yeah, we have a cutoff at the end of this week for new course proposals, so I'm anticipating maybe a couple more coming in.
Stacy, can you speak just a little bit about what it means where it says partnerships with Eau Claire Children's and UW Stout? And are they teaching courses within the structure, or are we getting resources from them?
Menomonie Parks and Rec do offer teachers right on site, so they take care of a lot of like the sports and things like that. But they also do cooking classes and things. Boys and Girls Club at the Menomonie Middle School, they'll be offering an extended program for middle school kids that goes with our summer school program, so they could do.
They bookends it?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And right now, we're just bookending the back part for River Heights for the young kids. We really want them to participate in our program and then go there after. So yeah, they're offering on-site. Eau Claire Children's Theater, they're going to offer it there, so it's the parents' responsibility to get them there. Most of them are like 9 to noon. But if we have good numbers from Menomonie, they will teach a week here, like a camp style next year. So I'm hoping we have good turnout for the Eau Claire Children's Theater because they will provide different theater things here, which I think the community would really like. UW Stout team is definitely, they have 5 different strands this time instead of just 2 or 3 of things that kids can go to right on UW Stout campus. So it's pretty easy to transport there, and we don't have to pay overnight fees and things like that. So
that's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the summer 4K program? Is that for students who are going to be starting the 4K program in the fall?
Yeah, so we have that, and then we have Camp Kindergarten. So it's the grade that they're going to be going into. And I would say that Camp Kindergarten are fantastic 4-year-olds. The numbers are usually pretty big, where kids, parents want their kids.
So for a whole bunch of families that
Yeah.
they're gonna have their first experience with the school district in summer school?
Yeah, they do 4K.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we usually have about 5 sections of Camp Kindergarten, and those are the kids coming in kindergarten.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Joe, can you give the, the short synopsis of how summer school impacts the overall budget? I think that's something that's not really often discussed as much.
Yeah, and that's something that we continue to study to try to determine kind of what the break-even point is for the school district. What we've done has really helped our budget in terms of enrollment. And actually, I was just looking at that, Abe. Last year, and summer school is not funded the same as the school year. There's a formula based on how many hours the students are in programming, and then there's a percentage factor that gets factored in, so it's not a one-to-one type of thing. But we did increase our total FTE by 116 students last summer. A lot of that was through the Jumpstart days because we had so many students here all day long in August as we started school. But it's tough because some of the programs are more expensive than others, and trying to offer a full, well-rounded summer school experience is becoming more difficult because of the cost. We still try to prioritize a variety of programs for kids, and we know that that's what our kids and our families want. But I would say generally we do well in summer school because of how we operate and because of the enrollment we're able to gain.
Thanks. One more dumb question. Is there fees associated with summer school in any, so do certain classes, if you have to buy like lumber to build a picnic table or something, or is it all covered?
It's all covered.
Okay.
Free breakfast, free lunch. Yeah, if people don't have internet access or computer access, they can sign up at ASC for an appointment beginning March 25th. to register during that same week as everyone else, so we do allow access. We will have some hard copies as well, but a lot of it's online.
The registration you're talking about.
Yeah. Yep, so that'll open up on Monday, April 8th.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
And I want to echo what everyone else said. Our summer school program is fantastic. It's amazing. We're so lucky here.
And I do want to say, Abe, I enjoy saying hi to your daughter.
All right, next on the agenda is a discussion of upcoming referendum election. Have you heard about this?
You know, you laugh, but there's going to be some people that are going to say, so what? What happened? So we had a vote?
So I think today was, I think it was the 20th presentation that we had, and it was great to see so much attendance, a lot of good questions and comments shared. I know there's also been a lot of discussion on social media. I wish some of those questions would come to the district so we can provide accurate information, but I think for the most part, people have done a good job informing themselves. I think everyone understands that the election is a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, February 20th. Polls will open at 7 o'clock and they stay open until 8 p.m. And from there, there's going to be a board of canvassers that meets and reviews the results. Jenny, do we have that scheduled yet? More than likely Friday of next week, so a week from Friday, the board of canvassers will meet and review the results and certify the results. But I guess I also wanted to point out that the school district website continues to be updated. As a district, we've been trying to put out one post a day. And again, this isn't to try to advocate yes or no. We cannot do that and we don't do that. It's really just about trying to make sure that people are informed so that they understand, first of all, the needs, but also the impacts of the results of the election. And one thing, I had some feedback on a post recently. We have relatively low fees for people to use our school district facilities, and I don't think people might understand how that benefits families. When you look at it, and the reason why I know this is because my kids just went through it, and I know several of you have been in the same situation where your kids might be part of Hoops Club or the baseball club or the wrestling club or music club or whatever these different clubs are, but also adult activities in the school facilities. We've really tried to keep our fees low, keep our admissions low, but those are some of the levers that schools are pulling in the revenue shortfalls that they're dealing with. And I think it's important for people to understand that we haven't, I don't think, raised our facility fees in 10 years. And I would like to keep them low. I mean, we don't want to have barriers, and it's absolutely ridiculous to me how expensive it is for elementary age students to participate in basketball, for instance. A lot of those opportunities used to be offered through a community recreation department or through a school, and now it's all privatized, which is fine. And I think in some cases you could argue that it's a better product. Parents are more involved, but the amount of money being spent for youth options, youth activities is astronomical. But in Menomonie, the cost to participate in those things that I have seen is significantly lower than it is in other places. I'm not saying every other place, but you do a comparison sometime, it's amazing. Well, if all of a sudden you start raising facility fees, well, those organizations, they run off of registration. So now it becomes more expensive to sign your kid up for basketball or wrestling or whatever, and that's going to get passed on to the parents. So I guess my point being is I don't know if people have a clear enough understanding of the overall impact that this referendum is going to have, not just on our schools and how we operate, but if the reductions start taking place and if fees start going up, it's really going to be a change in how we do things. And some people might like that change, and certainly they can vote no, and some people desire that change. But people need to understand there will be change. So I guess that's about all I have to add. We did on the website put a slideshow out there that has our social media posts, and then we'll continue to share that information through February 20th. Or you can go to like the school district Facebook page, and you can see, we have graphs that show how many teachers have retired and are retiring this year. We also have a graph that shows how our school district has, saved taxpayers over $7 million through the handling of long-term debt. We also have slides that show a comparison of our school tax rate compared to other school districts in the region. There's a wealth of information out there, and if there isn't something out there that people are looking for, please contact me. We're super busy. The number of questions we're getting is astronomical, but I'm happy about that. It's a lot of work, but I'm really glad because we want to make sure people do get the information. So please don't hesitate to contact the district office, and we'll do everything we can to get that information for you. But do board members have any other final suggestions or questions or comments regarding the referendum?
How can we make sure we get all our people out to vote? Is there going to be anything to promote or to remind parents, for instance? That would be my first idea.
We did send out the postcard to every box holder, and I know that it's not a perfect scenario, but at least every box holder did receive the postcard. I also attended the Bandorama concert, what was that now, 2 weeks ago from today? It's all blending together, and that was a packed house, and that was a nice opportunity to share. I know we have some other large events coming up that I'll be sharing, passing these things out and reminding people in social media, but I don't know if you have any other ideas, Dale.
Well, like you have email communication for various purposes. Can you legally use that to remind them to vote?
Yes, and it will happen. Yeah, there'll be a message that goes out this week. We typically send a message out to all school district families the week of board meetings. It doesn't happen every board, but the regular meetings, the second meeting of the month. Typically I share the highlight on youth report and then provide some other reminders about the district calendar and other things upcoming. I'm sure we'll remind people of spring break coming up here in March. But yes, there'll be a reminder in this week's message to families. And then, next week, Monday, I'm sure we'll remind people that the election is occurring. Anybody else?
There's no other questions about the upcoming referendum. And to clarify, this evening's presentation was the final one that's scheduled, right? There's nothing else on the calendar?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Items related to next meeting dates, board committees and reports. February 19th, the diversity committee meets here at 3:50. February 20th is the referendum election. Special school board meeting on February 26th. You have one meeting in March, which will be March 18th, the third Monday, right, of the month. The week before that, 11th through 15th, is spring break. Also no school on the 29th, which is Friday. April 4th is the CISA 11 meeting in Turtle Lake, and that has been, there's a flyer attached to board docs for folks to read more about that. And we should be in touch with Jenny, right? If you'd like to come on.
Yeah, if anybody wants to go to that, please let Jenny know within the next week so we can get registered. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. And then in April, regular board meeting on the 8th and the 22nd.
Rachel, I would like to point out too that it's Bus Driver Appreciation Week. And what we've done the last few years is we've gone to the bus garage and thanked bus drivers. I know, Carl, you attended last year. I can't remember who else did. But Jenny's got it all lined up. I'm going to go over there. I talked to Ryan Howe, one of the Howe brothers. I can't remember which one right now. Maybe both of them. Wednesday, so that's Valentine's Day at 9 a.m. I'm going to be heading over to the bus garage. If any board members would like to participate in that, please let me know. You're absolutely welcome to join me. I am also going to share some referendum information just so that to make sure our bus drivers are aware of what's going on.
Wednesday, you said?
Yep, this Wednesday,
Wednesday at 9.
9 a.m.
Is that when a lot, I just imagine a lot of the morning drivers are back in from their routes at that point?
That's the time that the house suggested I be there. So Dale, you want me to put you down?
Sure.
I'll try to make it as well.
I will try myself. Thanks.
Great. You're gonna come too?
There's usually donuts.
Yeah, we'll run donuts.
Well, I didn't know if I should ask him. Part of our on the record meeting, are we bringing donuts?
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, they deserve them. so.
They do.
Okay, very good.
All right, any additional questions about upcoming meeting dates, board committees, and reports? Great. And so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, David.
All right, thank you.